Would a Jewish person ever get married at Auschwitz? Would any of the concentration camps in Poland or Germany be the site of a tourist destination? Then why do Americans glamorize and hold such a special place in their hearts for plantations? The largest surviving antebellum period plantation, Nottoway, burned down in Louisiana over the weekend. And it was met with two different reactions. The reaction of those formerly enslaved Africans whose grandparents and great-grandparents were born at that plantation. And then this reaction, a reaction from white Southerners who are talking about their culture and their history and making it seem like something very endearing was lost.
Yeah, I was sad to see the Nottoway Plantation.
Everyone from all over the world came here to tour Nottoway. Just the history. I mean, this was built, in the Civil War. It stood this whole time, and now to see it just burned down, it's really sad.
Somebody take me. You done lost your damn mind. When you get your damn mind, you call me.
In America, we have a history problem. And that history problem stems from the white person being the victor in this country and writing their story as the victor, writing their story as benevolent, writing their story as kind, when in fact their story is gruesome, their story involves the ownership of bodies, and their story is, quite frankly, one of the worst atrocities committed to humans on earth. The antebellum period was a significant period in America before the Civil War that led to the expansion of slavery. With the invention of the cotton gin in 1810, the production of cotton increased, so slavery went from around 700,000 slaves to around 3.2 million slaves. During that time, social hierarchies became normalized, where white people were here, and violence and rape and essay against black bodies was the status quo. And that period is not talked about enough because it was during that period that America gained its foundation to make its way to being the richest country in the world. Without that period, America wouldn't be where it is. So then why can somewhere like Nottoway exist as a resort plantation? We have to talk about the cognitive dissonance that exists within white culture in America, and how a lie can be told so many times and glamorized and whitewashed to make it a part of their just Southern culture. Like on a tour at Nottoway, this is the dialogue given to them to say, this is the script.
The most in this region, and that's because when he purchased a slave, if the slave had a wife and children, he'd buy the whole family so that they would never be separated. And so that was good for them. And then in the village, he built a cottage for each of those families so they didn't have to share with multiple families and squeeze into one space. So that was good too.
Completely false. And we see in movies, we see in Hollywood, we see in stories that the benevolent plantation owner is something that is consistently force-fed to us, when in fact families were separated all the time. What was common practice was that slave owners would breed brothers with their sisters because they wanted to breed the strongest stallion.
Practice of slave breeding, perverse dance of power, economics, and systematic cruelty. In the twilight years of the 18th century, the initial flow of enslaved Africans to the American colonies had begun its slow. The demand for labor, especially in the sprawling cotton fields of the Deep South, did not wane. Instead, it transformed, turning its hungry gaze inward. Virginia, which boasted one of the highest populations of enslaved people in the early 19th century, soon earned the morbid moniker of the breeding state. Forced couplings and family separations inherent in slave breeding. Advertisements in newspapers selling breeding women or wenches were not uncommon. Their coded language belied the tragedy these simple words encapsulated. Anecdotes abound of breeding farms, where the most virile men and fertile women were paired, often against their will. Young women were subjected to systematic violence to ensure they bore children early and frequently. Families were torn apart, not just by sales, but by this practice as well, with fathers, brothers, and husbands powerless to protect the women they loved.
Buck-breaking is another one.
The practice known as buck-breaking was a particularly cruel and sadistic method employed by white supremacists and slave owners to assert dominance, humiliate, and subjugate enslaved men, especially during periods of increased slave rebellions. The objective of this brutal practice was to strip enslaved men of their dignity, emasculate them, and instill fear among the slave population. By subjecting them to public sexual abuse, the white oppressors sought to degrade these men both physically and psychologically. The process of buck-breaking typically began with the public humiliation and physical punishment of the enslaved man. Stripped naked, he was subjected to severe floggings in front of an assembled crowd, which often included other slaves. This public spectacle served as a means to dehumanize and debase the individual, reducing him to a mere object of amusement and terror. Following the flogging, the enslaved man would be raped by a white man, often the slave owner or a designated buckbreaker. This act of sexual violence was intended to assert dominance over the enslaved individual, reinforce the power dynamics of slavery, and send a chilling message to other slaves who dared to challenge their oppressive conditions.
There were so many evil and gruesome things done at these places that I've never understood how you can pay $50,000 for a wedding at Nottoway, the White House, and be okay with it, or how you can go on a tour, or how you can rent a room and stay there as a resort. It is something that will always befuddle me, and the history problem we have in this country is not accepting the facts. The facts are, we are the richest country in the world because we had one of the most gruesome forms of chattel slavery in the world. That's a fact. We, for 400 years, took from black people and they got nothing in return. This is a fact. You promised black people 40 acres and a mule. That never happened. This is a fact. When we finally were able to do things, you burned down all of our towns. That was a fact. Especially when you have those descendants of slaves who are alive and well, living in your country, and this history is not that long ago, as you guys want to make us believe. It is time to acknowledge what happened, and let's not glamourize or glorify what happened.